planning this one for quite a while, and I kept doing lots of different iterations of it. But as the title of the video says, this is like my gateway drug to fantasy, if you will. And, you know, which ones came after and what kind of kept rebooting it every time I would kind of let it go for a bit. So we're just going to talk stuff. It's 1:30 in the morning and there's still cars outside in our tiny little town. So whatever. I mean, it is what it is. And now we will drink some water because we didn't have any 32.4 seconds ago. Yes? Yes? You want to come say hi? Okay, come here. Come say hi. Yeah. That's right. Can you come here? Come here. Come here. Turn around. Say hi. Say, I'm Neville. My name is Neville Long Barkham. And I'm top dog here. I'm pretty cool stuff. Yeah. Okay. I got to get back to talking about fantasy. You are not fantasy. You are the best reality. So you just come here. Come on. Come here. Here, I'll scoot you closer. There you go. You can just snuggle up and we'll talk books. Because books. He's like, it's moving. He is such a scaredy cat. So Neville was a rescue dog. In the kind of the truest sense, if you will. His parents were strays. And they found him and his brothers and sisters under a creosote bush. They had never been socialized with people, and when we got him, they told us he wouldn't let us near him for a couple of weeks, so we had to just keep trying, and it would just take a while for him to get used to people because he didn't know anything about people. He was about 10 weeks old. You done? No? Okay. There you go. Good boy. That's funny. I can't believe you're doing this, but okay. So he brought him home, and he immediately went behind the chair. And even to this day, his dog bed is behind the chair. And now he's going to shake the camera. Anyway, so he put him behind the chair, and he was cowering. When we took him outside to use the bathroom, he tried to, hide in the places we couldn't get to. And then the next day, I heard this yapping, which I thought was really strange because he hadn't really made any noise. So I came out of my room. I used to sit on my bed and do a lot of writing. I came out of my room and he had gotten up. He's this tiny little thing. I mean, he was just tiny. He got up on the couch and up on the top of the couch in the windowsill where my daughter she turned the back of the couch and that windowsill into like a window seat as a little girl. I've got the cutest picture of her. If I can find it, I will insert it here because it's the cutest picture. When he got up there and couldn't get down, so he called me to come get him. And then after that, he was like my best friend. So 2 weeks turned into slightly less than 24 hours. And he's been our buddy ever since. We like our Neville Nosity. Yes, we call him the Sockness Monster because he likes socks. He doesn't really chew them up, but he will carry them around everywhere. So I'm just really surprised that he got up here like that. This dog doesn't like screens. He won't look at, how some dogs will watch TV or whatever. He won't look at a screen, except one time he watched Psych with my daughter. He actually watched the screen. Other times he won't even look at it. Like Lorna will be talking on the screen to him, on the phone or on the laptop. And he's kind of listening, but he won't even look at the screen to find out, if that's the source of the sound. It's very strange. So we're gonna talk fantasy. Now, I said in my kind of the recommendations from people who have made a big impact on my life that Mrs. Elkin, second grade teacher, introduced me to Narnia. And it really was my first introduction into fantasy. Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's still my favorite of all the Narnia books. I really like The Magician's Nephew, though. And Voyage of the Dawn Treader is pretty amazing. But, this is still my favorite. But I love what Lewis did here. I love his attitude about fantasy and fairy tales and all the things. Because of him, I read I call it fantasies, they call it fantasties. I don't even know what it's supposed to be, by George MacDonald. I tried so hard to get into that book. I had a beautiful copy, and I don't even think I kept the copy. I had a beautiful copy, but I got rid of it because I was like, no. Just no. I just didn't enjoy it at all. And that's kind of funny when you see the next book that kind of reintroduced me. Because after this, the next fantasy that I read would be basically fairy tales when I was in junior high, either 6th grade or 7th grade. So it might not have been quite junior high. Back in the days when junior high was a thing and it was 2 grades and it was like no big deal and you had elementary, junior high, and high. Yeah, there was none of this middle school stuff. So I started reading, back then I started reading fairy tales. I had bought a few at Pick and Save, a few books. And I really loved fairy tales, and I liked some of them were more overt and preachy, but I liked that a lot of them had a really subtle but strong as well, which is kind of, that doesn't make sense, but it does somehow, moral. Others were just crazy preachy about the moral, but it was pretty good, so I really loved it. And for those who like Narnia and haven't yet read it, Patty Callahan's Once Upon a Wardrobe. Now, I read her Becoming Mrs. Lewis, and I did not like it. I had a lot of problems with a lot of stuff in it. And I know she did her research, and I know that she talked with Douglas Gresham, and, you know, that he was fine with a book, you know, for whatever reason. But then I listened to Douglas Gresham talk, and I get a very different sense. I feel like the facts of Lewis, and I can't remember his wife's name to save my life. I want to say Deborah Winger because I think she played him in the played her in the movie. But I think Callahan did different things with the facts of their story that aren't necessarily how Gresham describes it. And so, you know, there's that. I'm not saying that they were perfect or imperfect or either or both. I'm just saying there's that. But this book, delightful. So in this one, there's a little boy. He's very, very sick. His sister is at Oxford, and she talks to C.S. Lewis for him. It's a story, but it's a story to tell how he wrote the story. So it's kind of a cool thing. But her brother wants to know, is Narnia real? And so she goes to this guy and she talks to Lewis and she gets his perspective, and it's beautiful. I loved this so much. It's a little bit of a tearjerker for people who have tears that jerk. That sounds really weird. You know, it is a bit of a tearjerker for most people, but it in all the best ways. So I really do recommend that for people who love whatever. But after those fairy tales, the next one that brought me back to fantasy was another fairy tale. This is the copy that my kids read. It is so battered. The Dust Jacket is. The book itself really held up very well. It's nice and tight. There's rubbing, but the Dust Jacket really, I just retaped it not that long ago, and it's been through the ringer. But it's a good book. It's a wonderful story about 2 girls taken by this old woman, and one is a princess, one is just a spoiled, they're both spoiled girls, but one is a spoiled girl of I don't know, it's like a baker, I don't know, it's just a common ordinary family, and then the other is actually a princess, and you know, one kind of learns and the other kind of doesn't, and all that goes with it. It's a beautiful, beautiful story, but it kind of sparked, I read this in the early 90s, and it wasn't long after that, sometime in the 90s, I think, is when, or maybe the early 2000s, is when so I was part of the Blogging for Books program with, I think it was Waterbrook. And they would send books out and we would read them and review them. And so it was a really good program, and I was a part of it. I read a lot of books with them, and this series, the Wing Feather Saga, this is not the one they sent me. I had the originals with the saber-toothed cows and whatever, but the On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness by Andrew Peterson is absolutely brilliant. And now there's even an animated feature of some sort. I don't know if it's a series or if it's actually just a film. I think it's a series, but there's an animated, and they look kind of like this from the animation, obviously. I rebought them because they came in hardback now, and mine were paperback. Maybe it's not Sabertooth. Maybe this says the Toothy Cows. So, but this, it's just one of those delightful, I don't know how to put it, one of those stories where you just kind of can't help but get drawn into. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous in a lot of places, but there's a lot of subtle truths in there, and I love the way the parents kind of trust the kids, and the kids don't totally abuse that trust, and yet they are kids. They're not crazy perfect, and there's just so much going on. They make mistakes. I feel like this is, if you like a series of unfortunate events, even though this is nothing like that, I feel like you would like this one because there's something to it. They're just, yeah. But they're wonderful stories. My kids loved them. I bought them all, and now I've repurchased them because I wanted hardback. But definitely the Wing Feather Saga. I'm going to say a decade after I read The Lost Princess, I got this in the mail. I read it. I read one by Overstreet, Aurelia's Colors, and a few. There's like a trilogy, and I read that around the same time, and I really loved that series as well. And I also got one by Donita K. Paul, and I did not enjoy that one, and I couldn't tell at the time if it was because I discovered, partway into the book that this is book 2, but I was kind of lost, and I wasn't really enjoying the writing, and I really had a problem with it. But, this one's out of order. But very shortly after that, I got this one by Donita K. Paul, and I think mine was paperback. I've since repurchased it as hardback. You will hear me talk about this probably every Christmas. Look, guys, the writing on this isn't phenomenal. It's not. The story is simple. It is. But it is so delightful. So in this one, you have this street, and this is this is contemporary fantasy, total fantasy. But there's this street that this gal ends up on. She's looking for a gift, and she ends up in this bookstore, and there's something kind of odd about the bookstore. She's not quite sure about it, but she finds the exact book she wants, and when she gets home, she discovers that there's a ticket in there. Or is there 2 tickets? I don't know. I think it's 8. There's a ticket in there. She ends up with a ticket to this Christmas ball, and there's a website, so she goes on the website, and while she's on the website, something really odd happens, and she's kind of fascinated, but Toothless wants to play. He's trying to get Neville to come out. Oh, get him, Neville. You get that puppy. You get that dog. Go. Get him, Neville. Get that puppy. He's going. Get him. Come on. And Neville's just... I faked him out. I love it. But so you guys are so weird. They're chasing each other around the backyard now because dogs. But he, at the same time, a guy goes in. So it's obviously a Christmas romance. But a guy goes in and purchases something and ends up with a ticket to the Christmas ball. And he goes home. Now, this gal is alone in the world. She's alone in her apartment. She's very much alone in the world. But this guy has, he lives with his sister who has Down syndrome. She's like 22. Her name's Sandy. I just love this character of the sister so much. And then there's him and is it his mother or his grandparents? There's several people all living together in the same place. And when they find out about this ball, he decides to go back and see if he can get another ticket so he can take his sister. I love this so much. And then obviously things converge. They meet the story. They try to go back to the street and they can't find it. And then they're trying to find costumes, and the cat is pregnant and she's flipping out, and Sandy's all excited about kittens. And I mean, it's just it's such a delightful story. And yet, like I said, it's not the best written. Unfortunately it's not, but I don't care because I love it. So this one followed on the heels of the other one that I read after the Andrew Peterson books, and I love it, and I kept it. And then it was sometime in that era that everybody was going nuts over Harry Potter, and I was that mom. I'll get into it someday and really tell everything, but I was that mom that was very much anti-Harry Potter. I took the biblical, have nothing to do with witchcraft very seriously, and I still do. But I foolishly believed what I was told about what it was. I was told that these kids were sent off to the school to learn how to do witchcraft. That's not true. And I had seen some really horrific yellow journalism pulling sentences out that show how bad the writing is. It was truly horrific yellow journalism. The anti-Potter, and don't get me wrong, I'm going to say it now, even though I'll say it again when I do a Potter video, but it's just fiction. If there's even the slightest check in someone's spirit about the books, they shouldn't read them. I'm just going to say, it's just fiction. The Bible is the only thing that is essential. So if a book bothers you, you don't read it. I am 100% behind that. But I bought a lie that this was about teaching kids how to do witchcraft. And so I forbade my kids from reading it. And then there was an ugly incident on a message board that I was on, and I got mad. And I bought the book, and then one day I was sick and I read the book, and I was really ticked off at myself because it is not about kids learning how to go and do witchcraft. It's about people who aren't even human going to school to learn to do what they were born able to do. This has nothing to do with demonic, has nothing to do with Satan, it has nothing, it's just a fantasy world. And so Harry Potter, I plowed through those books like nobody's business. They were so good that, yes, they get darker with each one. This is my favorite, the Mira or the Mia or the Mina, whatever they're called. I love these so much. But, and I just got my, the third one just came in. But I haven't even looked through it yet. But I read them all. There are actually a lot of Christian allusions in it. You can tell that Rowling was definitely influenced by classical education, by, the Latin twisted, the spells being all Latin, and the choice of things that are clearly allusions to Christianity and to Christian themes and whatever. It's so clear, it's not even funny. And so I loved it, and I still do. And as a matter of fact, I'm in the middle of starting the series over again, because I'm like, yeah, why wouldn't I? I listened to the first one, and on this trip, I will probably be listening to other ones if I get time between that and my Antober stuff. So there's that one. That's not going to fit there. So then after that, I kind of went a little crazy. And I think I have this out of order. I'm pretty sure this came first. So next up came the Squire's Tales series. But this book in particular, I got one of those, if you're a homeschooler, you know. But they used to send out these decks of like index cards of all the different curricula and books and services and like food mills. I mean, they're just these stacks of books. Yeah? Really? Okay. Stacks of books and I mean stacks of cards. And I was sick and I was flipping through one day because I couldn't really do anything. I was having a bad day, mostly a bad day, but I don't think I felt well either. And so, but I ran across a card about these books. This one in particular, it was the newest one out, and this is book 8. Are you thirsty? Come on, I might as well drink too. So I got the book because it said it was, you know, really funny. So I got it. I wanted something to brighten my day. And of course it came in when I was having a better day. But I read it and I plowed through it in just a few hours. And anything Neville does, Toothless does better. Toothless can do anything Neville does too. I don't know. But I loved it so much that I went back and I bought the whole series. This is the first one, the Squire's Tales. What these are, they're the Arthurian legends. Gerald Morris, not Gilbert, Gerald Morris is a Reformed Baptist pastor in Wisconsin. Or at the time he was. Who knows where he is now. But at the time he was Reformed Baptist pastor in Wisconsin. He took all of the Arthurian legends from the different countries and areas. He took them all together and he pulled the best bits from all of them and then wove them into stories for middle grade to YA. They're so good. They're so good. This one, it's either this one or The Prince, the Crone, and the Dunkard Knight. It might be that one. But there's one where he runs across this, they're going on this thing and he runs, or maybe, I don't know. I can't remember which one, but they run across these hermits at these hermitage and along the way. And the first one just wants them to weep and wail and cry and just be totally repentant for their sins and of course, you know, they move along to the next one, and the next one is incredibly charismatic and enthusiastic, and you can kind of see the different churches represented, right? And then you get to this guy and, you know, he is like, oh, you met him? Oh, did you cry? It makes him so happy when they cry. And they're just like, you're weird. It was so good. It was just, I love this series. So the Squire's Tales, this is the Squire's Tales singular, but the Squire's Tales by Gerald Morris, that kicked off and it all started with Harry Potter, but then I found this one. It kicked off a crazy, I started plowing through all kinds of fantasy, mostly middle grade and YA. The next one was The Ranger's Apprentice. This series, we loved it, except for book 4, the one, something Scandia. It's basically Scandinavia. They were all hopped up on drugs and slaves, and it was I hated that one. But this series, I loved it. It's about a kid who wants to be a ranger in this world, and that they're not so sure about him, but he manages to sneak in and do things that a ranger would need to be able to do. And so it's all the story about how he and Halt, can't remember the kid's name. It's been so long. I want to reread them. Will. His name is Will. And Halt is the main ranger. And I remember something about oak leaves. But I also remember that my son and I both loved book 2 probably the most. But there's like 12 of these. And then there are there's a spin-off series, The Brotherhood of something. They're really, 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 really good. And I love them. And then around the same time, N.D. Wilson came out with his, I think there's 3 of these. There's this one, there's Dandelion Fire, and The Chestnut King, I think. but the 100 Cupboards, this cover, I don't know if you can see it. All those doors. It's so cool. But this one is a kid who goes, he goes to stay with his family in Kansas. His uncle is selling tumbleweeds on eBay. And he's got this room that they've given to him to stay in for the summer. And he starts noticing that the plaster is coming off the walls. And as he chips away at it, just because he's bored, he realizes that there's a door there. There's all these little doors. There's a door there. And the next thing you know, he's pulling off all this plaster and finding all these little doors. And each door is kind of a portal to somewhere else. And it's super, super cool. Loved this book. I loved Dandelion Fire. Not as much as this one, I don't think. I can't remember. It's been so long since I've read these. I want to do a reread. But it totally grabbed me, held me. My kids loved this series. And it just, And then after I got done with Wilson's, I didn't read fantasy for quite a while. It was it a whole nother 10 years? It couldn't have been a whole nother 10 years, could it? Maybe 5 to 10 years. Another 5 to 10 years passes. And I was in my ACFW, American Christian Fiction Writers Group. We met at Deb's house, and she was talking about her book in progress. And her book was, she said it was Lord of the Ring meets Indiana Jones. And I went, oh. Now, we're going to talk about Lord of the Rings in a minute, but that just sounded great to me. Then she told us that the premise of the story is that this gal is an archaeologist. It's really funny. She's actually like either from or going to, I can't remember which now, the area close to me in Lone Pine, California. And that's like where my midwife was with my last child. So it's not that far away. It's about an hour from here. And I thought that was kind of funny. This archaeologist is going to quit being an archaeologist because she has developed a fear of ruins. I mean, come on. I just loved it so much. So she wrote Kingdom of Ruins. And it is available now, again, on like Amazon and whatnot. But for a while it was gone. But now it's back, and it's a beautiful, beautiful, there's even a map inside. But it's a beautiful story of she ends up, she touches this shard of pottery, and it becomes like a portal. So it's a portal fantasy. She ends up in this other world, which you discover once you're in there that we're actually the other place. They're the real world, which was kind of fun. And in this world, all living things are sentient. So trees are sentient. So and there's a really cool magic. There's this battle at one point in there where to fight against these people, they are throwing seeds that will sprout immediately. So they're throwing seeds to get trees to sprout up to stop the onslaught. And there's so much, but it's got a really neat, really, really, really neat story. And I don't know if Point's Worth is available. There's a prequel story, Point's Worth, and I don't know if you can get that on Kindle right now. I hope you can, because that one it's a short little, it's not even a novella. It's more of a novelette, short story thing, but it is a really super cool story as well. But this book, after I read Kingdom of Ruins, I was like, that's it. I need more fantasy, and so I started buying and getting more and more and more and more and more fantasy, and whew, I kind of haven't stopped. I mean, I've got Tress of the Emerald Sea, which I consider to be fantasy. I don't know what they consider it to be, but it's what I'm calling it. And I even wrote, after reading Harry Potter, I think, is when I got the bug to write the Winwood series, which is fantasy. I mean, it's mostly historical fantasy because it's pretty much historical, but I took a fantastical element and wove it into it. So the first one has actual dragons, and the second one has an actual unicorn, and the third one has dwarves. But I took things that actually existed and I made them work with it. The only other thing I can think of that I did is I put a lot of trees where there are none in England. I mean, on that right now on that Scotfell pipe, there are no trees, but I covered the whole thing with trees because it's my story and I can. So, but yeah, so fantasy became kind of my jam. I love it, and anytime someone tells me, okay, this is great fantasy, you're gonna love this, I want to read it. Do I have any? I have Trust, and I've got that Secrets of the Chocolate whatever. Those are definitely fantasy. The Ravenfall, that's fantasy for sure. And then Elias Reborn, that's fantasy. So I have a lot of fantasy on my October TBR. I'm excited. But so anyway, those are books that all of them kindled or rekindled my interest in fantasy. And they're not all the fantasy books that I love. That's a different video. But I just wanted some that talked about, why I love it and what made me go, yeah, I want that. I want more. So when I picked these individual books up, they rekindled and I read more because of it. And the ones that haven't done this for me yet, I did that because I'm getting the dust off the top. That's how. Guys, I want to love these books so much. You have no idea how much I want to love them. And every time I try to start them, I have trouble. I need to try The Hobbit again because I think I've only tried starting The Hobbit once. And if I recall, I might have been sick. I can tell that Tolkien is a genius from the little bit I've read. I can tell that his writing is good. I can also tell that he is wordy and crazy descriptive. And those two things are probably what has stopped me. But it's not like this book isn't wordy and crazy descriptive. I mean, I'm not even halfway through this thing yet. We'll talk about that some other day. But I'm reading Knife right now, and guys, this book is so good. So I mean, fantasy is a big thing for me. I want to love these, so I will try The Hobbit again. But I think first, before I do anything else, I'm going to listen to them, or at least one of them, probably The Hobbit, on audio, hoping that I can love these two. What do you think? Can I do it? Do you like fantasy? What got you into fantasy? What book was like the gateway drug to fantasy for you? And if you don't like fantasy, tell us, what about it don't you like? Because maybe there's one out there that you would. And even if I don't know what it is, one of the other commenters could say it, and then I can read that one too. Yeah, this is all selfish and self-serving, and yeah, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. So yeah, a lot of books. So yeah, I think what I love most about fantasy is that it's still relatable, and yet because it isn't exactly how things are today, it's kind of a sideways approach to addressing certain issues, which is really cool. I like that sideways approach. And who thought this was a good idea to bring all these books in here? Oh yeah, that was me. I'm not putting this on top of the stack because these are the ones that actually did kindle or rekindle my interest in fantasy. Yeah, so these are the ones. There are others, obviously, that I have read. I've read lots more. But these are the ones who either kindled or rekindled my interest. What got you going? What made you say, oh yeah, I like these other worlds? And which one of them do I need to read next? I'll be back on Monday and probably with my first video from Bern. I have this idea for an airport video that I'm hoping my daughter's friend will help me with. So I will see you then.